Welcome, everybody, to another episode. You might think it's the Brady Bunch. Nope, but it is, in fact, the Ball family, almost all of the Ball children. Each of the fantastic ladies and gents you see here on the screen graduated from AFA from 2001, going way back to when I had lots and lots of hair. Michael Ball. Hello, Michael.
Hello, Dave.
And Stephen, his brother Stephen. How do you do, Stephen? Welcome.
Hey, what's going on, Dave?
Great to have you guys. And their sister from 2002, Miss Emily Ball. Welcome, Emily. Great to see you.
Hey, thanks for having us.
Great. And then from 2008, Miss Grace Ball. Grace, welcome, Grace. How are you?
Good. How are you?
Good. And last but certainly not least, in Atlanta, the youngest of the bunch, Mary Joyce. Mary, welcome to you from Atlanta. How are you?
I'm good. It says Perry now, but I am a Ball at heart.
Yeah, that's true. Yes. Yes, you married an AFA grad, Kyle. That's
Yes.
right. So, guys, oh, look, here we have, hold on, one more. Drum roll, please. It is Ann, Mrs. Ann Vaz. Ann, welcome, Ann, to the 25th anniversary podcast series. How do you do, Ann?
Hey.
How's it? Great. Glad you could join us. I know your kids kept you waiting, but we're so glad that you made it, and hope that they'll be safe and sound in bed. So, yeah, Stephen, you live in Northern Virginia. You have 4 kids of your own. Michael, 4 kids. Ann, 4 kids. Grace, you have a daughter, 1.5 years, and Emily, you're watching. You're currently watching you're a guardian of a 7-year-old girl. Wow, it's just so weird. And when Michael and Stephen, you mentioned that your oldest kids are going to start learning how to drive soon, I nearly the rest of my beard nearly went gray. It just was like, oh my goodness, how does this happen? But here you guys are, and it's been a while, but it'll be great to catch up with you. So you guys went to AFA at different times and places. All of you were involved in some ways, most of you with basketball or with other facets of AFA. But you also were in different grades at different times of the school's life. You know, Michael and Stephen and Emily, very early on. Mary, as kind of towards the middle of the school's life, 10 years later. I'll just throw it out there to whoever wants to begin. What would you say, or maybe why don't we start with the oldest grads, Michael and Stephen, going back to the very early 2000s. What was memorable to you about your experience at AFA? What stands out to you now? Michael, why don't we start with you?
Sure. I mean, I think it was a cool place. It was a tight-knit group. It was a good group of kids. I mean, I think our class, we graduated with 9 total, something like that. And it was great. It was way too small to be cliquish. And so it was just, we were all hanging in there together. And, we were probably like most high schoolers, a bunch of punk kids. I know I was probably a pain in the butt most of the time. But man, what a great time. What a great, a lot of great memories. And I think that, I think that looking back, I still remember some of the things that we learned. I think that we learned to write and we learned to think critically more than we ever have. So.
Very good. Stephen, what stands out for you? Something specific, perhaps?
Yeah, something specific. Well, I do want to clarify one thing. I have 3 kids, 1 in the oven, so no.
Oh, okay. All right.
But almost 4.
All right.
We're almost there.
Yeah.
One month away.
1 month away. Wow. All right, here we go then. All right.
Yeah,
Very
so
good.
I echo Michael's sentiments as well. I think the thing that I take away from it the most was the writing. I use it every day. I mean, I
Mhm.
those emails on a daily basis, and I think about how I learned that skill. Really from your wife. And well. Uh, and I think that probably has had a very huge impact on my life, even moving into college and then on to my professional career. As far as a specific thing, I mean, it's the relationships, just being on the basketball team. You were the coach at the time, and
Right.
there were some lovely, wonderful memories. We lost some games, but we won some too.
To say we lost some games might be a slight understatement, Stephen. We lost our fair share of games, but I'll tell you this. Whenever I needed anybody, when you and Michael were on the team, whenever I needed anybody to commit some kind of hard foul, there you guys were, ready to step up and commit that foul for me.
I think you're mixing me up with somebody else. I was the rebounder.
Oh, yes.
I think you're mixing him up with Annie, maybe.
Maybe, yeah. Oh, yeah.
No,
You definitely put me in for fouls. I remember that.
Yes.
I remember once against. Oh, sorry, Steve. I interrupted you. Go ahead.
No, go ahead. Well, go ahead, Michael.
I mean, I think you pulled. So I was bad. I was not good. So I think you probably coached a lot of us. I was not good at basketball. I was the worst. Probably the worst. I was a scrub.
Michael.
I have a distinct memory of Michael being put in to commit a foul. I really remember that too. It was against
ISA.
No, it was against ISA because Michael only dressed.
I couldn't even do a good foul because the guy scored on me anyway.
Michael only dressed.
His angry figure running across that basketball court to commit that foul.
Well, to be fair though, Michael only dressed for one game. Michael only played in one game because Greg Allen was injured.
Right.
He needed another player.
You need someone tall and lanky.
And I remember at one point during the game, for some reason, Connor and Cole were out, and so I was like the one guy on the floor.
Right. Yes.
You had taken Michael out to put in somebody else who was a better scorer.
Mm-hmm.
Like I was dying out there, and I was like, I need his defense. And you're like, we need to score some points.
Oh, very true. Oh, yeah. No, those were good days. And, we were pulling, our teams at that era were kind of put together by kind of like duct tape and shoestring, but it was a lot of fun coaching you guys. Emily, you also played, you were one of the stars of our girls team at that era. I believe you helped lead our girls team to a third place tournament finish one year. Yeah, either your junior or senior.
Some good times.
Yeah.
I loved basketball. I have definitely fond memories of learning like the complexity of leadership because it seems so great and grand until you're actually there, and then you're like, people aren't doing what I'm saying. Great experience. I was gonna say, Mr. Mathman, one of my favorite memories, and of course, Michael, do you remember when he used to make us play? It was like kind of like Jeopardy, except questions, and he'd go up on the board and he'd like write a number down, and he'd like put his hand in there and look, and he'd pull it out like, yes, the number, and it was like a scribble. Does anybody else remember this? And it was not like intelligible, like you couldn't even tell what it was written on.
Yes.
I don't know if you saw, they probably don't even have whiteboards anymore.
Right. So Emily, that way I could make it kind of any number I wanted it to be. It's one of the tricks of the trade. So
Of course.
Here's another one. Here's something else I do. Well, I hope none of my students really watch this. But like, you see someone that's chewing gum. You don't say anything at the moment.
Uh-huh.
Like you turn your back, you're writing on the whiteboard, and then suddenly you stop. You're like, wait, hold on, somebody is chewing gum. Your back is turned, and they're like, what? No, how can they be that? And you look, well, it's you, isn't it? Like Bob or Joe or Jill or whatever. Yes, I thought I heard something. Yes, you have gum. And they're all like shocked, like, what? Like, no, it can't be. How did he do that? I'm like, I just have this sense. So yes, one of the little
all
tricks.
about the setup.
Yeah. Yeah. So if you write it illegibly, like you can say it's anything almost. Yeah.
Even the way you score your papers, I've learned some illegible numbers always help out with the
Right.
math.
Yes. Oh no, that's a 90, not an 8. Yeah, whatever. Sure. Right. Yeah. And if you write illegibly, they'll think, boy, he must be really smart. Like, I'm not going to ask him about what this no. That's true. I'm sorry. I did fairly well in school, but not in handwriting. Even in elementary schools, like C- and all that. So I apologize for all of my illegible comments on your papers.
Memorable.
Yes, good. Anne, you graduated in 2008? No, 2005.
Yeah.
2005. What stands out for you about your experience?
Definitely, again, like exactly what Stephen and Michael already said. The critical thinking skills and the writing skills that we learned from senior thesis was a really big takeaway, just moving into college and initially into my career, for sure. Today, there's a lot that I love. I mean, now that I have kids, I'm thinking a lot more about the education I want for them and the education I was able to have there, and how much I love just the classical method that was followed, and what I want for my own kids. It's kind of changing. I guess I'm thinking about that a lot more. I think like you actually, Mr. Matherin, are the only teacher or the only single person that all 6 of us have in common from
That's true.
our Advante's experience. Because I think all of us had different teachers for basically everything else, and different principals. Like, none of us had the same principals, teachers, except for you. You're the only commonality. So we all have been through your history classes, and
the scribbles.
I thought that was
scribble on the board is what
we.
we have in common.
Yeah, we all know about that scribble.
And the map. Don't forget the map.
Yeah.
Where
exactly.
we're alive.
Oh yeah. Yeah, but I think I think those were 2 really big takeaways. And of course, like I think the for oldest, like back in the olden days, Miss Harris and her Latin was always like, I don't know, that's kind of an older generation thing.
Yes, it is.
But she was Mrs. Nagy when I was there. She was no longer Miss Harris.
Right.
But the 3 older kids all had Miss Harris. She was definitely a big memory. I think all of the older generations of students have. She was just, I mean, I loved her classes. She was just a wonderful teacher and had amazing Latin skills from her. But anyway, I think those are some of my big takeaways from my time.
Thank you, Anne. And Grace, what about you? I think the only ball that didn't play basketball for Advantes, I don't think you played.
Oh, that's right. I didn't play basketball. I just went to many games and was the cheerleader for Bone Stevens and Mary's and.
Go ahead. Yeah, what stands out for you about your time at AFA?
I would say I think what they've kind of gone on, but critical thinking. I've just always gone back to that, like thinking about Mr. Broughton's like Bible class. Like I just remember him never giving us the answer to anything, like always just challenging us. And Mr. Carey's physics class, like, gosh, I don't even think I would have ever gotten through physics if it wasn't for him and his creativity and the way that he taught. And just the conversations and discussions that we had in the classes that I think that were really, I am not academically inclined in comparison to my other siblings. So like, it wasn't my strong suit at all, but like, I, really appreciated Advantes in the fact of, it challenged me, and it was small enough that like, I remember like Mrs. Schultz coming up to me. She was like the chemistry teacher, and like asking me about dance and stuff like that. That just was like such a personal relationships that, got you through in such a great way. So I don't know. I think I would say critical thinking and just you know, the personal relationships with everyone that like, you know, really helps when you're like, you know, just learning and stuff. It's not such a big classroom that you're like kind of lost in the masses, you know.
Mhm.
So I
Sure.
really appreciate that.
Well, great. And Mary, you get the last word on this question. You graduated in 2011, so 10 years after your brothers. From what said, do you resonate with anything, or would you have anything else to add?
I think that the one thing that I think about a lot, we've been talking about critical thinking, and I think the piece of that Kyle and I talk about a lot with our jobs, my husband Kyle, who also graduated from Infantes, I think of it more as like a problem solving, like we all learned how to learn, we all learned how to think from AFA, and so that piece of critical thinking for me, the way that I think about it in my work, especially, is problem solving. So no matter what comes up at work, for me, especially at work, I kind of have a framework and confidence to face any problem. And it could be totally different things. I mean, I work for in marketing, but I was handling IT stuff. I didn't know anything about that, but I'm a problem solver. That's something that was taught to me. And so I just, learned and asked the right questions and that sort of thing. So I think that piece of critical thinking that AFA is so consistent about, for me, that's kind of how I think about it, with just being a problem solving machine. You just crank out problem solvers.
Yeah, well, fantastic. That's great. And of course, it was a weird thing, but I was actually asked to coach our girls team when you were a junior and senior. And I'm proud to say that not only were you one of our leading scorers on the team, but you also inherited your brother's ability to commit a foul when necessary.
Yeah.
Something that other girls just didn't really know how to do. I remember, right, like we were behind by a few points. I needed to stop the clock and say, foul. We're like, what? What do I do? But Mary, you knew how to do that. Like, you were taught by some of the best.
Can I just say, I know no one has mentioned this. As balls, we are very ready to pull out our rhetoric and have a good debate.
Yeah, go ahead. Yes.
Definitely a wonderful skill, I think, that was sharpened for all of us with our experience at Advantes, particularly prior to going into the more secular settings of college, to be able to defend not only a thought that we might have, but also our faith. And I just also want to comment, since I spend a lot of my days trying to convince people to take care of their health.
Mm-hmm.
It's a great skill. And I think that's just something nobody's mentioned yet, but it's definitely just feeling comfortable with public speaking. And
well, I imagine, Emily, with you, with your nursing background, right, and your current nursing experience, I imagine that just telling them the facts, only gets you so far, and probably rarely really convinces people. I imagine you have to pull out, you have to rely on other means of persuasion to get people to start to eat better or take their medicine or what have you. Can you think of like a specific example when you've had to pull something out to try and get someone to change what they were doing?
Yeah, I'm glad that you brought that up. I was really thinking through that, and I think as if you came to a dinner discussion at our house, it's usually pretty heated, and we go full force. And I would say, I think one thing I have learned is, as when I started, I think I would go back into those skills that I had and really just try to convince somebody with the facts, that what I had learned at Advantes. Let me lay out the facts for you. And I think I've grown since then to be a better listener, because I listen to my patient. And if I can hear a common thread, like they keep talking about their grandchild, or if this kid keeps talking about something that they like on social media, I can utilize that because I see a passion, and then I can pull that into what I want to convince them to do. I know that you want to be able to see your grandchild go graduate from high school, and we all want to see you get to that point. Will you consider, things like that. So I would say being a better listener is a skill that I don't know that it was just something I've learned, I guess.
Well, good. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
It was just funny because I just came back across a book that I was supposed to read. I don't know if I read the whole thing. My senior year, and it was How to Speak, How to Listen. And I started reading. I was like, oh my gosh, this is so good.
Oh, yes.
But I'm sure I read some of it, and I think that it goes off on that, but it's how that's just so important. And it's definitely something that that was more than, when was 2008, 12 years ago? That was 13 years ago. And, that was just something that was important to them. And Mrs. Moore kind of teaching that in her senior thesis class, that's just something that's so important today. And you just don't see that as much. And it's cool.
Right. Yes.
And has been since the beginning for Advantes.
Well, that's great. Thank you, guys. Those are great comments. I guess some of you, again, Mary, you graduated like almost 10 years ago. What about Advantes do you think should never change? And what maybe do you hope has changed in that time since you've left? Maybe Michael, Stephen, like Emily, we can go way back here. How would you answer that question?
I think just thinking through my experience, and I think it was maybe a little different for my siblings. I was in a very small class. I loved it. I loved that we were close. There wasn't room to not address each other's differences. Because we had to there wasn't room, like Michael kind of mentioned, for there to turn into cliques or something. We really had to work through things together. And I guess with, time, there's more growth and possible diversity, and, which I think is great. I don't even know how I'd answer that if I would say that was a good thing to the size of it all.
Yeah.
But I think I loved the size that I had, even though it was kind of ridiculously, I think probably too small. But I think of I don't know, Anne, if you would want to comment on your class size and just how that, if that changed, if that was good or bad, or also if each of you guys had different experience as far as the diversity of thought within your classroom.
Yeah, I think definitely the smallness of the classroom was awesome. That said, I'm pretty sure my graduating class, out of all 6 of us, may have been the largest. I think it was 14 kids, which may have been the largest that Advantes had ever had when I graduated. I'm not sure. It was a long time ago. And we even lost some. I think we went from 16 or 18 down to 14 between my junior and senior year. It was so it was one of the larger classes. And my experience, I think, was definitely very different from my 3 older siblings in terms of the smallness of the class. But there was a lot more diversity of thought. And I remember we would get into it because we all thought very differently in that class. And it was great because Advantes provided this space for us to really have these debates and discussions. And we all had the tools because we had learned the tools there. And then we all were able to really we had argumentation and debate, I think, my junior year. And that was an awesome class. We all would we had so much fun. Just I had fun. I don't know about anyone else. I had fun. Because there was surprisingly a very wide, maybe it's not surprising, maybe that's naive of me to say so, but between 14 kids, there was a huge diversity of thought. And I think that was really great, even though Emily's saying it's kind of funny. You have a smaller class, you couldn't get away from each other. And so you were able to discuss things. Even in a slightly larger class, we still, I think Advantes just fostered, our teachers just fostered a place where we could all express, what we were thinking and how to express it well and how to really engage each other in a lot of things that are very relevant, a lot of issues that are relevant to just everyday life, whether political, religious, social, whatever it was. So I had a great experience being able to foster that.
And I would jump on that and say the teachers, obviously you're sitting here. I wish we could always keep awesome teachers there. Like Annie mentioned, Miss Hare. There are these teachers that, you mentioned that name and people will light up. And obviously Mrs. Madden was huge for me. She was my senior thesis advisor. Memories. And I literally remember my parents let me even choose when I was going into school if I wanted to go to Advantes, and I saw all the teachers and I was like, I want to be here with these teachers. The classmates were a little goofy, but I loved the teachers.
Well, weren't you the only girl, and like there were like 3 other guys or something?
Yeah,
like
I was the only girl senior year.
Right. So yeah, and those guys they could be a little goofy. Yes, I'm sure. Yeah. You're right about that. Anybody else want to chime in on this question?
I actually thought it was, oh, sorry, go ahead, Michael.
No, MJ, you go.
I thought it was actually interesting that the class size came up so immediately when we were all talking about things that we liked and, memories that we had, because that is exactly what I thought was my class we were all so close. We didn't have a senior class my junior year, so we were seniors like 2 years in a row. But it was really huge for us because we had a huge influx of new people that year. And so we were really just like gelling, and like what Annie was saying, we just had there was 11 of us, 10 of us junior year, 11 of us, I think, senior year. And there was such a big variety of strengths. That's kind of how I thought of it. We all got along, and there wasn't maybe quite as much argumentation and debate as in Annie's class, but we all had really different strengths. That's kind of what I remember is the support that I got from, even thinking about my husband, Kyle, he was a huge physics whiz. He used to teach the physics class sometimes, and he would come to me and say, what is this, whatever literature we were reading, what am I supposed to write about in this paper? And he would help me with physics homework, and I would help him with English papers. And that was true across our whole class. We had such different strengths, and we all were just really supportive of each other. And I thought that was really cool because we were all pushed, into each other's strengths. I was pushed to do physics. He was pushed to do, to think critically about literature, but we all were able to support each other and really get to know each other's strengths. So I love that about my class.
Mm-hmm. Michael, you were going to say something. Thank you, Mary.
Oh, I think that I've heard that it's a little bit more fun at Advantes these days. I think that no, we really enjoyed our time there with but it was I think that the era for at least me and Stephen and Emily was things were a little bit more strict. I think that I've heard about some of the fun things they do now. I'm a little bit jealous.
Okay, so
my kids would like it.
Okay, what have you heard?
They have like these houses or something now that they do? Do they still do that?
Yes, we started the house system, I think.
That's fun.
So it was just after Mary graduated. And right, so that is, I do think that is a fun thing about Advances. I do think it's been one of our more successful culture building things as the school has gotten larger overall, keeping, mixing grades up, it kind of mostly randomly into these different houses, and then they compete and I think there's a lot of cross-grade relationships. I think we do a better job of that now. Of course, before the school was small enough that you would run into people anyway. But around Mary's time, school was getting bigger. We wanted more cross-pollination. The houses are more fun.
It sounds fun.
Yeah. It is. Just recently, so we're meeting in person now, of course, and we substituted a traditional first housing competition among the houses. We called it the Corona Games. And so we just like coronavirus inspired sort of events involving like hand sanitizer and toilet paper and face shields and stuff like that. So yeah, we're trying. It's interesting you mentioned the class sizes, and I think because they have varied. It's interesting. Like, Anne, you graduated with 14 or 15, maybe, I think. Then even this year, right, my middle son's class is 10, right? So the school has grown, but the class numbers at the very top, in our junior, senior year have not gotten a lot bigger. And I think there are various reasons for that. what I will say though is, and I said it on other podcasts, but if you can make it through the kind of crucible of those 8th through 9th, 10th grade years with that group, you can come out on the other side, really, even if your class personality is more contentious like Anne's was, because I remember, yes, it was contentious. And it was fun, but it was definitely, words were said, words were exchanged, I remember. Or a class that had a little bit more, at least, outward unity like Mary's. There is still, right, a kind of shared fellowship that comes by being put through, I don't know, mutual suffering perhaps, or experiencing a lot of the same kinds of things and being forced. You can't hide. You can hide in 8th and 9th grade, but by the time certainly you're a junior, you can't really hide. And so you have to kind of be who you are, and other people have to deal with that, and you have to deal with them too. So as we have changed, I do think that has stayed the same, and I've seen it happen in my son's class, in senior year, where if you were to rewind them when they were in 8th grade, it was not a pretty sight. But some of those people, now are, are co-house leaders, are leaders of the same house, and are cooperating that, wouldn't give each other the time of day, a few years ago. So, I do think that does, there is a kind of secret sauce there that does have a particular effect. Yeah.
Really beautiful.
Yeah. So what do you think should change besides more fun? What do you hope maybe has changed since your time?
Do you remember when we had to put when you said duct tape on the when I was at Advantes, we didn't have jerseys.
Right.
Y'all have money now, but I think I got my dad's company to get us jerseys. I think at some point but we had T-shirts and literally with duct tape with our numbers.
That is true. Yes, we had those the pennies, and we had to put I will say, our basketball program, you should see. Now, unfortunately, our basketball program is on hiatus for a couple of different reasons. Obviously, COVID being one of them. But you should see now the guys' basketball team. They have warm-up suits, warm-up outfits.
Advantes has arrived.
Yeah, warm-up outfits that they can just kind of pants that you can just kind of grab and whoosh, then you got the shorts. Wait a sec, come on, yeah.
You're where's my outfit?
Buried in some kind of time capsule, Emily, I'm afraid. But right. But the good thing is, Emily, you could come to a game now, and then you could say, well, back in my day, right, we didn't have it so good. I'm curious, how many of you guys have said back in my day yet, right? A show of hands. Come on.
I think that there was a hearken to that with Michael a second ago.
Yes, right. Oh, come on. It's fun, isn't it? I mean, you never thought you'd say it, but it's fun, right? You haven't said it to your kids yet?
I mean, I was starting to. Who was I talking? Some of the Grave kids, Daniel and what is it, Ellie Graves?
Yeah, Daniel and Ellie Graves. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I was chatting with them, asking them about. Oh man, they're fun. They're fun to talk to.
Oh yeah, they're both. So that's interesting. So Daniel is a sophomore. Ellie is a freshman. What? How did you end up in conversation with them?
Oh, I think we were just chatting about that they were going to school during COVID, and Ellie had some quip about participating in collective silliness with the face shields that you all have to wear.
Oh, right.
I think it's great. I think it's great that you guys are actually meeting. I think it's awesome.
Right. And I said to some people, wearing this face shield, I look ridiculous. You look ridiculous too. But it's worth it. We're meeting in person. Let's just all look ridiculous together.
Can I say too, don't ever let Infantes, I don't want them to like be so up, be so spiffy and so like cool.
Mm-hmm.
Like part of like the heart that I love about Infantes was it was just a little off. Like don't mishear me when I say that, but like I don't want to go to school where everyone's hair is perfectly coiffed when everyone pulls out.
And you went where to college? Where to college?
But I just love that it was the space is allowed for freedom for the kids of some room for the goofy kids and the fun kids, and it's not this like really polished situation. I think that I love that about Infantes.
Yeah, and going off of that is like I was gonna say this is some things that I would want to change. I like loved the dance portion of school. And like it's so silly, but it was like I just remember thinking like, oh, this is something I'm good at doing. But then it was great though because it was like you dance with all the kids, and that you dance with every single person in your class, and like the kid that like had 2 left feet was there doing it with you, and like there was that kind of that camaraderie there was just so great. And I think like that the fact that you're kind of just like all in this together, there was no cool kids, there was no like we were just doing it all and we were doing it together. And I think the one thing that I would love to see if anything changed at Infantes would be like more of that kind of going on. And just I don't remember there being like really any extracurricular. I don't think besides basketball, like that was like the only other thing you could do at Infantes.
Right.
So I would love to see like other things, like kind of maybe I'm saying an arts person.
That's great. Well, first of all, Emily, I'd say don't worry. You'll never have to worry about my hair being perfectly coiffed. I can promise you that.
We've got that one's good.
I got that down, right. But Grace, that's interesting you say that. Of course, we still do protocol, and especially we instruct our upperclassmen that they are to dance with everybody that night, especially our gentlemen, that they are to find, every girl in the high school and, as many as they can to ask to dance. But, you mentioned, Michael, the house system, and that is, so Grace, I think as we started to grow a little bit, to try and make sure that we had a place for everybody. So our house competitions, there are athletic competitions, and there's also an arts competition, which involves photography and singing and like, instruments and stuff like that. And then a kind of academic competition. We've even added a dance competition to the house events and a cooking competition too. So we do want to try and find a place for everybody. That's interesting. As we've grown, I do think this, as long as our name is Adfantis Academy, I don't think we'll ever be particularly cool. I don't know if that's possible. But you say that.
Yeah,
man,
always it's like, so where did you go to school? I'm from around Adfantes. What?
Yes.
Adfantes?
Right. You pretty much, as soon as you say that, you kind of pretty much have to put like, duct tape in the middle of your glasses, really. It kind of pegs you in a certain place. I think that the school still is a place for all kinds. And I think because of the breadth of experience, and now we do have more electives and do have more ways for different kids, like formally for different kids to have a moment. I think that's one of the goals of the house system is that everybody in the house system, at least at some point in the year, will have a chance to have a moment, So maybe you don't win, first place in painting, but people will see your painting, and they'll remark on it, and it will be great even if it doesn't win something. So, I think that is a challenge for us as we grow, not to put too fine a sheen on what we're doing. That's an interesting comment, Emily. Yeah. Does anyone else have any thoughts? Yeah, Stephen, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, so, I mean, I hate to be the weirdo here, but the one thing that I kind of hope for Infantes is as the school grows, that it gets the advantages of being a larger school. There extracurricular activities that we didn't have when we were there because we were so small, and you couldn't. I think my junior year we couldn't really feel we either didn't have full sports. I don't know. There was some kind of basketball, but it wasn't even a full.
Right.
I think you
It
should.
really didn't come about to my senior year.
Mhm.
And then like the other passion that Michael and I have, and the girls do too, music. Really any kind of music department or any kind of music.
Yeah.
And that's the kind of thing I hope for the school, like as the school grows, that they get more of those kinds of extracurriculars that, kind of come with a larger group of people. You need a larger student body to be able to field certain things. And that's one of those things that, you kind of look back and you go, oh, it would have been cool if we could have had this or that. But, it's one of those things I hope moving forward. And I've heard, that, as things have gotten bigger that, some of those things have been able to happen. But it is the disadvantage to being small is that you can't have some of the cool stuff
Yeah,
that
that's true.
larger schools have.
Yeah.
That was one of the things that, I think, again, looking back, I wish it could be different. I certainly wish that we could have had some music and a drum line or something like that.
Yeah. Well, I think, we're working on it. And I think we do have more options now. I think, there is that balance between, do we have the staff for it? Do we have the space for it? Do we want, right. We can't be the glossy school. So we shouldn't, I think, try too hard to be that. But at the same token, right, we want to be a school where everybody who comes, right, can find their niche and find it quickly. That's a great comment, Stephen. And as Emily was saying, we don't put duct tape on the uniforms anymore for numbers. So that is a small step, at least. There is that.
I had one thought about that, which I think is interesting because I saw all my siblings go through and kind of the changes and the different emphasis in the extracurriculars that were available through the years. And kind of one of the things that I like, even though to what Stephen was saying, where we can't have everything all at once. There isn't a drama and dance and music all at the same time. But what I really appreciated was like the years that I was there, we had a lot of kids who were into theater. And so drama they were like, okay, we can put on the importance of being earnest. And so they did. And so I thought that was really that's some of the flexibility that you get with being as small and knowing the students as well as you have to with such a small school, where when you realize, oh, we can do this, we have enough interest in X, we can, get that done. So I appreciate that flexibility that has definitely been present where, I don't think they were putting on full dramatic productions, back, 5 years before, or even when Grace was there, just a few years before me. But that was something they saw interest and they acted on it. So I appreciated that.
Right. Yeah. Actually, it's interesting you mentioned drama because now this year, again, we can't do it this year, but the previous 2 years we had some seniors who wanted to direct their own Shakespeare play. And it was really cool to see the whole student body, a large portion of the student body come together and volunteer. And this was all, with some parental help around the edges. But I'm thinking of Emily Smith and Abigail Smedley, and this year and last year, Sylvie Jones and Enoch Sven helped out some. They put on their own Shakespeare, and I thought it was one of our best productions that our school has done, and it was done because students had a real interest in it and they really wanted to do it. I think I like that kind of flexibility, as you were saying, Mary. And part of that comes with being not fully set in concrete, and there are disadvantages to that. But that can be an advantage. That okay, if we've got enough people, and you want to do it, go for it. But it's interesting, Grace, you mentioned dance because, that has become I would say that is one of our hallmark cultural, formative events we do. My son who's a senior now is just killing him that we're not doing protocol. because this is a huge thing. This is it's not just,
That's
we
too
got to
bad.
go. No, this is a major event for the students that they really enjoy. So that has continued, and I think grown in importance over the years. Yeah. Well, guys, this has been fantastic. I've really enjoyed hearing from you and seeing you all. Does anybody have any final thoughts or words or?
Can we ask you that question? I would love
Okay.
to hear. I mean, was that Mary Joyce that commented on that? Like, you're the only one that taught all
Right.
of it. That's crazy.
That's true.
You really have had a pulse kind of on the school over the years, and I would just love to hear your thoughts on how the students have changed. What has changed? What have you enjoyed over the years? What do you miss?
Mhm.
I mean, I guess I don't know. How long have you been there?
So this is my 22nd year.
Wow.
Yeah, I think I came in 90.
Years.
Wait,
Wow.
yeah, the fall of '98. That was my first year. Yeah, the fall of '98. So that was a couple years before. Yeah, Michael and Steve. Wait, yeah, or 1 year or 2 years before you guys. Yeah, something like that. So right, it's been a long time. Okay, so the days when the school was 35, 45 people. Right. Okay. So that's a little bit of the Wild West, and I do miss that a little bit. Because you feel like you're pioneers, and you have that, and the students feel it too. I think, in a sense, that you're out on a limb, and you're almost out over the cliff, and you kind of aren't sure that you're going to stick the landing. But because the structures, the habits, everything is kind of being made on the fly. And that is that is a thrilling sort of experience that once the school gets more established that you don't have, right? I do miss that a little bit. But I do think growing and getting bigger, there is the positive to that is I think the school can be accessible for more people. So we're able to help tutor people with learning differences now in ways that we could not have done even Mary when you were here. So we get a little bit broader variety of students as we get bigger, and that's good. So Emily, I guess I admit that I miss a little bit those pioneer days, but I think what I appreciate about the changes is something we've touched on, is that I think, Emily, Michael, Stephen, back in your day, I think the school was kind of, it took a certain kind of student to a certain kind of family to work at AFA, and that bandwidth was kind of narrow. Just like it takes a certain kind of person to be a pioneer, to walk across, the plains out to Oregon or what have you. Not everybody really can or should do that. I think as we've grown, around Mary's time, I think the school was starting to broaden out. And I think now, right, more kinds of families from more kinds of backgrounds can come. And I think maybe that's one of the biggest changes that I've seen in the students and the families that come. They're coming from a broader field, broader background. So sure, we're still getting people from homeschool, but we're getting a lot more public school transfers that we would never have had, in the early days. And that's a good dynamic. And some of those students are some of the students that actually latch on to AFA the strongest. They're like, wow, wait, this is what I've been missing all my life. And a broader degree of churches now than I think back from 20 years ago. I think I can't remember, of how many families we have. It's somewhere around, 80 to 90 families. And of course we have somewhere around 215 students or something like that. And these numbers might be off, but of those people, we have those families, we have 70 different churches represented in the area, which is really kind of cool. But that's a challenge too, on what are we coming together? And how do we navigate some of those differences? how do we teach, such a broad field of diversity? But I think that, so yeah, I would say those are probably some of the biggest changes that have happened. Yeah. So what do you think about that, Emily?
No, you really were able to articulate that well. And I have that more of that pioneer personality, which is interesting to hear, just having kind of worked in jobs where I've had to start things up. I really see that in myself. So maybe that's why I excelled at the school at that time. Mm-hmm. That's really interesting that you can pinpoint and say that. Would you say your teaching, like the way that you teach, if I walked into your classroom today, would I remember? Would I be stepping back in time, or have you even changed in your teaching?
Yes, I have changed. I think some. I think, yes, you still couldn't read my handwriting. That hasn't changed.
I'm glad to hear that. I'm glad to stay.
Yeah. I don't think you could read. You could read my handwriting. And even though you've had lots of experience with doctors, I'm sure probably still could not read my handwriting. One of the things that I think I've tried. So when I taught Stephen, Michael, Emily, when I was a new teacher myself. I was kind of trying a lot of things out, and I think new teachers probably focus a little too much on communicating information, and they're probably teaching to a narrower band because their own stream, what they know is smaller. But over the years, I tried to learn and grow, learn as much as I could. I think you would recognize a lot, but I think we've added more discussions, we've added more speeches in a formal sense. There were always discussions, like you were saying, amongst the students. Plenty of arguments in Anne's class, and even some, I think, in Mary's class too. Especially, Mary, do you remember that jury activity we did? That got pretty heated.
That was very heated.
But I think we're now building that in more formally into our curriculum. It's assessed more formally. So I think you would see more discussion, and I tried to do more and more games that I didn't have when, Michael and Stephen and Emily, when you guys were there. Games that I started to put in when Anne was there. So Anne played the Peloponnesian War game.
Oh, I remember crushing you at the Peloponnesian War game.
Yes, I know.
I betrayed you. I betrayed everyone. Me and Jen.
That's interesting that you remember that, because I definitely remember that. So,
yeah.
Right, ladies and gentlemen, I was Persia and
yes.
and
I was Minos, or we were a tiny island.
Chios. You were Chios.
Chios. There you go.
Yeah, and I had this alliance with you, and I thought, surely sweet Anne will never. I was planning to betray you as well, but you beat me to the punch and turned on me and left me hanging out to dry and destroyed. Yes.
Yes.
I tried to do more of those games, but the Peloponnesian War is still there, and that game is still there. And I've tried to do more games, more discussions, and I've also varied my review games. But I still do review games. I think I probably still tell some of the same stories I told you, Emily, and Michael, and Stephen. So that's how I've tried to change. And we tried to build that in throughout our curriculum. So even in our math classes, our Mr. Carey will emphasize, discussing a problem. Rather than just, here's the formula, do it. All right, here's, how would you work this out? Talk. I think, Stephen, go ahead.
Sorry, before this gets away, I just want to mention one thing, because this really did impact me. I was not in, Michael and I took history from Linda for junior year. My senior year was your first year. Well, I don't know if it's your first year of teaching history, but Linda had to step away because she was pregnant.
So it was my first year. Well, it was my first year teaching that particular history class, yes.
Yeah, American history.
Right. So Linda taught American, but then I think I taught you guys government.
Yes, you taught Michael and I government. That's correct. So when your dad came and talked to the class, the whole school came for that. and I got to hear him
Yeah,
talk.
my grandfather.
Or no, yeah, I'm sorry. Your grandfather was your grandfather.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Mhm.
Yeah, your grandfather. I'm sorry. I apologize.
Yeah.
That had to be one of the most amazing sort of like living history moments in my life.
Yeah.
That and the stories that he told about being in World War II and he was in the airborne, I believe.
Right. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That to me was one of those experiences that you're just not going to get anywhere else, and it's once in a lifetime kind of things that I really appreciated. Even though I wasn't in the class, I still got to hear the talk, and that was really awesome.
Yeah, well, I appreciate that. Of course, yeah, I really he enjoyed coming, and he had a lot of fun, sharing some of his experiences. And he had like 2 or 3 just like great stories. I mean, he would tell the same ones every year, but it didn't matter. So it was, unfortunately, he's passed on, and it was sad for me when I realized that he wasn't in, sometime after you guys, he wasn't able to come back and share. But that was great. That I was glad that he was able to come and see me. I was proud for me to hear my students, and it was great for me to kind of show them off to you guys. So, Stephen, I appreciate you remembering that. That's great. Thank you. So, Emily, I hope that answers your question. I think we've gotten better. I miss the old days, certain aspects of the old days, but I think overall we've gotten better at educating in a way. Like, I think Emily, like Michael, and I think great, like your classes, you could do a lot of that kind of naturally. Like you say, you came from a family that had robust discussions. Now I think we can take people that aren't naturally bent towards that, and because of some of the structure of our curriculum, we can help push people in those directions and help. I don't want to say like create people like that, but definitely make people a lot more comfortable with discussion, with speaking, as well as writing. I think with writing, we've always been pretty strong, and our graduates, I think that's a constant theme with our graduates. Like they go on to college, they talk about strong writing. I think we've gotten better at being intentional about developing speaking. I think we have gotten better in certain respects. And hopefully can continue to improve without losing, like you were saying, Emily, that pioneer sort of spirit, because that was a lot of fun.
It certainly was. I think those years were fun years. I don't regret putting duct tape on my jersey. That's for sure.
I'm glad. All right. Wonderful. Well, guys, I know many of you have kids that you probably might need attending to, and jobs to go to tomorrow morning. I really thank you all for coming. This was a real treat for me, and I'm sure for those watching, this was a real treat for them. So Michael, Stephen, Anne, Emily, Grace, Mary, thanks so much for joining me. I'm really touched that you guys all flocked. All of you came for this, and I know whoever watches this will, I'm sure, get a kick out of it and be blessed as well as I have been from this time. Thank you so much to all of you. I really appreciate it.
Thank
Of course,
you.
thanks for having us.
Thanks.
All right,
Thank
great.
you.
And we can't see you this year. You can't. I was going to say stop on by the campus this year. Well, not this year, at least not yet. But in future years, come on by. And love to see you. And who knows? Maybe your kids might darken our doors one day. We shall see.
Hey, Mike.
All right, wonderful. Well, everybody, thank you all for joining us for this special 25th anniversary edition of our AFA podcast. And my thanks again to all the Ball family. And we wish you all well, and God bless you all. Thanks again, everybody. All right, bye-bye, ladies and gentlemen.
Bye.
Take care.
Good night.
Good night.